I would like to thank the LUMI for inviting me for the second year to participate in this totem pole journey. I have been working on researching this proposed liquefied natural our website, sightline.org. We are a sustainability policy think tank based in Seattle. And so we research and analyze proposed fossil fuel infrastructure, and research supports what we call the thin green line, which is the Pacific Northwest's opposition to the building out of fossil fuel infrastructure in this region. And this is just one of the many projects that we have been fighting against for the last 10 years or so. And in the past 2 years of working on this project, I have been repeatedly reminded of the fact that the average person would much prefer to be sold a comforting lie than to receive the truth for free. The first I ever heard of this project, I was approached by a citizen of Tacoma who was concerned about the project, and their main concern was that they felt that the project was going to be something different than what Puget Sound Energy was billing the project as. So I looked into that and discovered that they were absolutely right about that fact. Puget Sound Energy was selling the terminal as a different type of terminal than it actually is. So I got to work in reading the environmental impact statement, about 250 pages of text on the project, and when I got through reading the 250 pages, I didn't know much more about the project than I did when I started reading the 250 pages, which was my first area of concern. Second area of concern came when I looked through the appendices to the project and looked through the section where the public had supposedly had an opportunity to comment on the project, and realized that the public had not had an opportunity to comment on the project. No one really knew about the project. It sort of had slipped in under the radar. The very few comments that were there were basically form letters that all said the same thing in support of the project. And so I realized that we had an issue on our hands, because the final environmental impact statement had already come out for the project. The public had not had an opportunity to participate in that process as they should. And the general information that was out there about the project was absolutely false, starting with the underlying issue, which is that there is nothing natural about natural gas.
That's right.
Woo! Yeah!
About 90% of the natural gas wells in this country are fracked today. 90%. They produce 70% of the natural gas that is produced in the United States comes from fracking. There's nothing natural about it. Fracking is a water consumptive process that also poisons the land around the wells that are fracked. And so we have impacts to people starting at the place where the gas is derived, all the way along the pipeline infrastructure where methane is leaking out of the pipelines and contributing to the warming of our planet, to communities where these projects are being proposed. And what we find over and over in environmental communities that are trying to prevent the Pacific Northwest from being converted into the new Gulf Coast, what we find over and over is that these projects are proposed in cities where the backing companies believe they're not going to get a lot of opposition. They are proposed in cities where there are not a lot of job prospects, where they feel that people will be desperate for whatever type of project comes into the community. And so we've seen a lot of that playbook going on with this project. But there are some even more disturbing issues that are particular to this project. I want to just cite a couple of them. So number one, as I said, the project was billed as something that it is not. It was billed just as a facility that was going to store natural gas for local customers. Only when you read the very last appendix of the project did you see that this is actually a marine bunkering terminal and a trucking terminal. It's going to provide fuel for ships and fuel for heavy haul trucking, and only about 7% of the fuel is going to go to local customers. So that was the first issue that we uncovered. Second issue is that this project is sort of sliding in a regulatory environment that hasn't caught up with this type of project. It's a very complex LNG facility where, again, they're going to have ships and trucks hauling LNG, and marine bunkering of LNG is something that is new to this country. We only have one operating terminal, marine bunkering terminal in the U.S., much more simple than this terminal. And so the Coast Guard, who would come up with the maritime rules for this terminal, has yet to create any maritime rules for LNG bunkering. They're in the process of doing so. They put out some recommendations, but those recommendations are not binding. Companies don't have to follow them. So this project is sort of skirting in before that rulemaking can take place. And so what I realized is that we need to apply very strict scrutiny to this project. That scrutiny has not been applied by the City of Tacoma. That scrutiny has not been applied by the Port of Tacoma. This project, for example, is going to have LNG tanker trucks traveling on the roads of Tacoma. In order to do so safely, the roads around the facility need to be brought up to heavy haul standards. Well, that's not going to happen till within 5 years after the commencement of construction at the site. So for several years, we will have those LNG tanker trucks traveling on the roads of Tacoma. And with some recent changes in the project, there are going to be even more tanker trucks than are stated in the environmental impact statement. The facility also violates recommendations by companies who are in the LNG industry, the recommendations that they put forth for LNG bunkering facilities. The American Bureau of Shipping, Society of International Gas Tanker and Terminal Operators, all of the recommendations that they state for an LNG bunkering facility are being ignored by Puget Sound Energy with this facility. Facilities are not supposed to be located within proximity to civilians. Facilities are not supposed to be located on narrow waterways. Facilities are not supposed to be located near any neighboring facilities that are engaging in activities that could produce sparks or any fire hazards. All of that is going on here with this facility. In addition, when you conduct LNG bunkering, because LNG is a gas that can escape, you are supposed to have an exclusion zone around the site where that bunkering is taking place, because every other ship that passes by is supposed to be considered a possible ignition source. This facility will have no exclusion zones. This facility is located at a port that is already crowded, in which there will be, the studies have shown that there will be major issues in trying to evacuate that port if there were an accident at the LNG facility. It's located far too far from the nearest fire station. So they say they're going to reopen a fire station that was just closed because the city didn't have enough money to keep it open. The company is putting a minuscule amount of money towards that fire station, and so I have very strong concerns about how it's going to be able to stay open when the city didn't have enough money to keep it open in the first place. And so in trying to get this information out to the public, in the past 2 years, I've written a couple of articles about it. I've worked on trying to get the city to conduct a supplemental environmental impact statement that will take a look at some of the issues they didn't look at in the first and very inadequate environmental impact statement. Have gone to the UTC to try to prevent them from allowing Puget Sound Energy to restructure the corporate structure of this project and put the costs of it onto the consumers. I have watched the local paper attack environmental activists in Tacoma. I have watched local politicians repeatedly lie about the project, to be frank. And as I said, been reminded again and again that people would rather be sold a comforting lie than to get the truth for free. And that's the average person. And I am very, very excited to be here in this room tonight with a lot of above average people. And I would like to thank the Puyallup tribe for everything they have been doing around this project, raising awareness. The tribe has been raising awareness around this project. The tribe has already had some victory where this project is concerned. They prevented PSC from dredging up contaminated soils on the Puyallup waterway. I would like to thank Redefine Tacoma, who has been working in solidarity with the Puyallup and also doing a lot to try to increase the level of knowledge that the public has. I want to thank all of the organizations that have come on board and with this project in the past year. It's so wonderful, and I really hope that now that we have more eyes on this situation, we can continue to disseminate that free knowledge and to work to stop this project before anyone is harmed by this project. We do see at the site, we do see some construction already ongoing. This is one of those strategies that companies use to try to make you believe that you don't have any power, right, that it's already beyond your ability to stop. But we have stopped projects that have done more construction than they have done on that site. We have stopped projects with more money behind them than this project has behind it. So in closing, I want to encourage people to stay encouraged. The people in this room, myself included, there are many of us in this room who are the descendants of the people who survived. Descendants of the people who have seen some of the worst brutality that has been exhibited on this earth. Genocide, enslavement. We are the descendants of the people who survived. So we can survive the newspaper printing false information. We can survive politicians continuing to spread that false information, and we can stop this project. Thank you all.